Football on Off the Ball.
With Paddy Power's Save Our Game. Donating at least 100,000 to Irish football via England goals this summer. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.
Very good morning to you. Welcome along to yet another episode of the Euro 2020 show here on Off the Ball. Shane Hannon with you for the duration of the entire tournament across Europe this summer, and we're live in all the usual places as well today. OTB Sports Radio, that's on the OTB Sports app. You can download that for free right now in the App Store and indeed the Play Store. We're also live on video right now, youtube.com/Off the Ball, on Facebook and indeed on Twitter as well, at Off the Ball. And our OTB Sports Euro 2020 show is live with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euros. And last night's goal from Raheem Sterling means that's €20,000 guaranteed in the kitty for Irish football. Now, both goals, of course, for England at this tournament so far, courtesy of Raheem Sterling. Over the coming weeks, I'll be joined by plenty of Euros legends, football insiders and journalists as we preview the upcoming matches every single weekday. Republic of Ireland international Jack Byrne will be with us this morning very shortly to talk England and Scotland and life in Cyprus, I guess, as well, and everything else besides. He'll also be joined every single day by a different member of Team Off the Ball, and this morning it's the debut on the Euro 2020 show for our own Premier League commentator and football expert, Mr. Nathan Murphy. Morning, Nathan.
Wow, that's the big build-up, Shane. Delighted to be here. How are you keeping?
No pressure, no pressure. You're a football man, as we say. Like, you're a man who loves a permutation, I think, as well, Nathan. You're someone who the rest of us kind of avoid it and just put our fingers in our ears and pretend we don't know who's coming third and who's going to get through, but you're all over that.
Yeah, I do love a long look into the future and what teams could meet each other along the way and where it all breaks down. I was in a few WhatsApp groups with mates of mine going through how exciting it all was now that the way the draw was breaking down. We could have 4 or 5 of the big hitters on the one side, and maybe for England it might actually open up on the other side. And the more I went through it and the possibilities of what could happen with tonight's games, the more I saw people weren't responding anymore and just really didn't care as much as I did. But if you are a permutations nerd like I am myself, tonight is going to be exciting because there's a lot that can happen, and it'll go a long way, I think, to deciding what happens in this competition, because I tipped Belgium at the start of this tournament. There's a real possibility now that Belgium could end up having to play Portugal, Italy and France to even get to a final, depending on what happens tonight. And likewise for England, they could well end up playing Germany and then maybe a Sweden, Denmark to get to the final, which is a bit more appetising than what faces Belgium. But again, there's a few different things that can happen tonight, depending on the third place teams. All of this really is because we have this situation where third place teams, 4 of them qualify. And I see there's a real split as to whether the format works or not, whether it takes away excitement or whether it adds to excitement. I kind of feel it adds to the excitement. And I think nobody in this country can be critical of the format, considering what it gave to us 5 years ago, was it today or yesterday, when Robbie Brady scored that goal?
Yeah, like I was suspicious about all these third place teams getting through, but yet the final day of that Belgium group, Belgium, Finland, Denmark and Russia, was extraordinary, and something that I guess means there's less dead rubber matches potentially because teams have something to play for, so it's a little bit more exciting. Like, when you talk about England, and look, we watched the game last night. Well, I kind of was trying to double screen. I don't know what you were doing last night. I know Phil Egan on OTB AM this morning was talking about having his eye on Scotland mainly. I was kind of in a similar vein, but keeping a cheeky eye on England as well. But how are you managing these final day TV watches? Like, are you all in on one game? Are you a little bit of both, or how are you managing it?
I'm doing the little bit of both. I watched most of the England match and flick back at times to watch Scotland. The fact that you can't get ITV on Sky anymore has been a disaster. It means I don't get any Roy Keane. I don't get to tune in for the analysis. It means you're watching the old grainy footage on the RTE News channel of the second match that was on last night. So, there's a lot of flicking and hoping you don't miss out on anything. I got lucky last night. I think I managed to see pretty much all the goals. So I saw the full build-up for Modric's wonder goal last night with the outside of his boot, having passed across field with the outside of his boot as well. But these are a night like this. 2 games at 5 o'clock, 2 games at 8 o'clock. This is the dream.
Like, if England hypothetically, so England will be playing one of these teams in Group F now in Wembley in the last 16, but I'm not comfortable with this England team in terms of progress in this tournament. Like, great squad, don't get me wrong, excellent team, but Gareth Southgate simply does not know his best 11. Like, yeah, Saka came in yesterday and was excellent. Grealish started, which everyone wanted, and was excellent. So maybe he sticks with those two and things improve. Harry Maguire brought a bit of solidity as well to the defence. Jordan Henderson was great. He started to pass the ball forward, which Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice weren't doing a whole pile of. But I just don't know. If England come up against any one of Portugal, France, Germany, I'd be worried for them.
Yeah, it's hard to get a real grip on where England are. We came into this knowing that they were somewhat lopsided in their quality, that they had any amount of attacking options and world-class players there, but you'd have question marks about their goalkeeper and their defence. And Gareth Southgate, I think, was clearly aware of that, and why wouldn't he be as well, and has focused the team rather than trying to look at their strengths and become this attacking force, has actually put all his focus on making sure that defensively they're rock solid. And it's worked so far. They haven't conceded a goal in their 3 matches. They are looking like a team that are hard to break down. And major tournaments, when you go and collect that trophy, what happened previously is sort of irrelevant. Look at Portugal 5 years ago. Didn't win a game in the group stage. Scraped through in the knockout stages in extra time on penalties. Were terrible to watch, but got the results. And maybe Gareth Southgate, through all their build-up games, through all their training, has looked at it and thought, if I give in to the attacking instincts of these players, we're going to leave ourselves way too open. So I'm going to just keep players back, hold Declan Rice, hold Calvin Phillips as much as possible, and then hope that a bit of magic comes from one of that front four. But you're right, he has probably given himself a welcome headache last night. Grealish has to start. Like, there's no question now. I think that Grealish will have to start whoever they play against next Tuesday. Saka is the interesting one. Like, does he bring back Mason Mount if he's available? Mount, probably England's most consistent player in the first couple of games. He's a player who fits the system that Gareth Southgate wants to play perfectly. But Saka just seemed to be able to do it better than Mount last night. The transition, getting them forward from back to front. And where does Phil Foden fit into all this then? Like, England are having their own Wes Hoolahan moment right now, where once upon a time it was, well, Jack Grealish has to start. I wonder how quickly it'll come back to, well, where's Phil Foden, the outstanding young player, arguably in Europe over the last year, and England may go into a last 16 clash against one of the big guns and not play him. And that right now feels like a real possibility, because Kane will play. Sterling will play. I know Kane's not having a good time of it, but I can't imagine a scenario where he doesn't start and that they go with, say, Foden as a false 9 or something like that. It's too late. It's too late to try something like that right now. So it does seem as though it'll be Foden or Grealish and Saka or Mount. It's going to be fascinating to see what way he goes. I think Maguire unquestionably will continue to start. Henderson probably again on the bench, off the bench, if he's not fully fit, and maybe he gets in if they continue to progress through the tournament. But I think England have done okay so far. I think, yeah, they haven't been as exciting as we would have liked, and you'd wonder, like, perhaps a Germany or Portugal will suit them in the last 16. They were at their best last night, I thought, against the Czech Republic, when actually in the first half the Czech Republic were coming at them, when there was a bit of space actually for those attacking players to get into, when it was a bit more frantic. When Croatia sat back and Modric got a grip of the game, when Scotland didn't come out of their own half, that it felt like when England really struggled, and when Rice and Phillips going side to side, just became very dull to watch. But actually, as you go up against better teams and they are more of an attacking force, maybe that will suit England's style, where Rice and Phillips will sit back, and actually then there's room on the counter-attack for the fullbacks to get forward sometimes, and also for the likes of Grealish and Sterling to wreak havoc. So there seems to be a bit of doom and gloom around England, that they haven't been the all-star attacking force that they expected. They've won their group, they're in the last 16, and they seem to have a good ability to grind out a result. So, yeah.
I was driving up from Monaghan this morning thinking about our obsession with the English starting team. So when the starting team comes in, even for the first game, you're thinking, oh, Trippier's in. And then you're like, oh, Calvin Phillips starts. Will Grealish come on? Will Grealish play? Jadon Sancho, where's he? Harry Kane, will he be dropped? Like, do you think other countries are as obsessed with a starting team? Like, are people in France sitting on tenterhooks waiting for the French starting 11? Are people in Germany? Like, England have such a good squad. Why is there this obsession among the English media, and really the Irish media as well, about the English starting team?
Well, I think it's understandable, the English media. Maybe we need to look at ourselves. Listen, we've always been in the shadow of English football. We are obsessed with the Premier League. We watch it week in, week out. So I think we can have that conversation about the English team as readily almost as we can have it about the Irish team, because we probably watched every game Jack Grealish played last season, every game Phil Foden, so people feel qualified to have an opinion as to what they can do and where they should be because they've watched them play so much. I think the conversation in Spain right now would be very interesting. The late night phone-ins, the paper after paper that's just dedicated to Spanish football, obsessing over what is going wrong, over why they can't score any goals, over whether it should be Moreno or Morata, I'd imagine is taking up a lot of space in Spanish people's heads right now. So I think it's only natural. This is a huge tournament. Every country is the exact same. We're in a slightly different boat because of our relationship with English football. I don't know, in Luxembourg maybe? Are they looking at the French team and fascinated about what the French are doing? I don't know. And I don't think we should beat ourselves over the head about the fact that there is an interest in the English team, and whether you want them to do well or not. Or, we've had that debate previously, but people watch English football. They watch the Premier League. It is, I would say right now, the best league in the world. The best players are playing there. And you could go through all 26 of that English squad, and we've all seen them all play. So we know what Tyrone Mings can bring and what Harry Maguire can bring and what John Stones should do, and maybe why Ben Chilwell should play at left back instead of Trippier or Shaw. So listen, it's part of the enjoyment, and at least it gives us something to talk about when, unfortunately, Ireland aren't there.
True. Yeah, I guess another team that we know a lot about is Scotland and the Scottish players. We get to Jack Byrne, the Irish international, very shortly on the Euro 2020 show this morning. But Scotland, like that 3-1 defeat, I guess at half time when it was 1-1, Nathan, and the Callum McGregor goal was just lit up Hampden Park, lit up my living room, I'll tell you as well, because you start to believe then, you start to think maybe they can go and do it. But Luka Modric just ran the show, and unfortunately for Scotland, it just was never meant to be in this group, really, was it?
No, it was always going to be quite difficult. I think that first game against the Czech Republic, they were just a little bit too loose. It was a brilliant game to watch, and obviously they got undone by what ended up being the goal of the tournament by Schick. But that was a game they needed to take something out of, particularly knowing that 4 points would probably get you through. That actually, don't lose that first game. Keep it tight. His team selection, he got it wrong. He should have played Gilmour. He should have played Shea Adams in those first match. We saw what Gilmour was able to do against England. And last night they gave themselves a chance, but with Croatia, as poor as they were in the first half, still have arguably the greatest midfielder of his generation in Luka Modric. And he just got a grip to that game. Like, even before the goal he scored, some of the touches he had were just sublime. And when I flicked over, I watched him for about 10 minutes, and I often think watching Modric and those great midfielders, whether it was a Xavi or an Iniesta, you could do that Zidane-style movie that, Mogwai put the soundtrack to of them and just focus on them for the full 90 minutes. And I can't wait to hear what Jack thinks about him and the way he plays the game, because he never stops moving. He is always, except when the right thing to do is actually not to move and just stand there and give the angle. But there's never a time when the guy playing to the left of him or the right of him doesn't have a direct route to Luka Modric, where they don't have a straightforward 5-yard ball. And then he's not. There was a time where there was a view that maybe he was a holding midfielder. Like, he always turns towards goal when he wants to and will release somebody quickly. I've always loved Modric. I always remember being at the Champions League final was it 2017 in Cardiff? And I think it is the best individual display I've ever witnessed firsthand was Modric. It was the one time I just noticed his unbelievable bravery on the ball when Juventus pushed right up at times on Real Madrid, and the Real Madrid keeper rolled it out to Modric. He might have 3 Juventus players. We're talking about some of the best pressing attacking players in the world, and he'd take it off the keeper, and he'd still have time to turn and just put it through the 3 of them and release Real Madrid, and off they go, and suddenly they've beaten the press. And to do that again and again and again under that pressure, it always stuck with me, the speed that he was able to do it. And the great thing about international football, and it's one thing I love about international tournaments, because we always see it, is that because I think the pace is slightly slower, these older players can have a massive impact. We've seen it with Pirlo before, with the likes of Cannavaro, with Zidane, that actually they can have this final flourish. And like, Luka Modric has had one of the greatest careers any player's ever had with what he's done at Real Madrid, the amount of Champions League titles he's won at Real Madrid, and what he's done with Croatia to bring them to a World Cup final and again bring them to the knockout stages again. Oh, yeah, you could just watch him all day long.
Yeah, that composure on the ball is a tough thing to coach and tough thing to teach. Like, he just has it in spades, and he's just So, but like he's heading for 36, I think. Like he could go for another 2 or 3 years. You'd imagine at this level because he's so fit, keeps himself in shape. Quality player. We might bring us on naturally to the rolling all-stars. Nathan, my team of the tournament that I've been kind of changing as we've gone along. Recency bias 11, as Adrian Barry called it, but that's fair enough. I have done the unprecedented thing today, Nathan, of not changing my 11 whatsoever. So Luka Modric is going to be a little bit spiteful, unlucky a little bit here. Perhaps Raheem Sterling as well. Like Szczesny of Poland in goals, the back four, Dumfries for the Netherlands, Lindelof of Sweden. You're sighing already.
Alaba at centre back. I'm not having. Alaba hasn't even played his best football at centre back. He's far better when he's out on the left hand side. Alaba, you need to get rid of Alaba. England, get John Stones in there.
Well, yeah, there's no England player. There are no England players in that team at the moment, which probably is a little bit unfair, given that they haven't conceded a goal. Yeah, maybe. Like John Stones has been okay. Harry Maguire was good last night, but maybe if it is the recency bias 11, he should have possibly been brought in there himself. But yeah, Alaba in the centre of defence. Look, I'm the manager. I'll put him where I want. Robin Gosens, Germany left back. The midfield then Aaron Ramsey of Wales, Kevin De Bruyne for Belgium, Gini Wijnaldum, who's been excellent for Netherlands, and Berardi for Italy is only in there still because I couldn't possibly take out all the Italians. And then up front, Romelu Lukaku and Cristiano Ronaldo. So there are probably a few unlucky heads in there, I'd say, Nathan.
Well, Luka Modric has to be in that team.
Yeah.
Has to be in that team for second half against England. From then on, he has been the midfielder of the tournament. You've got the wrong Italian as well. It should be Barella instead of Berardi in there. But we'll give you that because they'll get more in as the tournament goes on. I think you need to take Alaba out there and stick another centre back in as well. Maybe get one of the English players. Maybe even get Jordan Pickford in goal, who's had a surprisingly solid tournament so far. Made a couple of good saves last night. It's hard to question Ronaldo and Lukaku. Lukaku's got to be there, and like Ronaldo has done very little aside just from score all those goals, which is exactly what you want from Ronaldo.
Yeah, like Marco Verratti will probably be coming into that team as well as the tournament progresses, you'd imagine. But yeah, Modric will be in it. As long as Croatia win their last 16 match, he's coming straight in. Don't worry, he'll be in. Time to welcome to the Euro 2020 show as well this morning the Republic of Ireland international midfielder Jack Byrne. Jack, morning.
How are you doing? You alright?
Keeping well, Jack, keeping well. I know this is bittersweet that the Republic of Ireland aren't at this tournament themselves, but how are you enjoying the action so far? It's as myself and Nathan were saying, 24 teams, which we feared would dilute the quality, but so far so good, I think.
Yeah, I think it's been really good. I think it's just good to have a major tournament back, and obviously there's a bit of a delay in it, but I think everyone's just happy that it's come around now and it's all gone well, and there's all the games are going ahead and there's been no delays. So I think it's been really good, and it's obviously something to watch and just keep yourself busy, and I think everyone's really enjoying it. It's good to see the fans back as well. It makes a huge difference. Massive difference.
I mean, that to have home games and to have fans like we saw in Budapest and in Wembley and whatever else, it certainly has made a big difference. Like, have your pre-tournament favourites, your pre-tournament dark horses kind of changed over the course of the last week and a half or so, or how have you? Who's impressed you most, I suppose?
I think Italy have impressed everyone the most. I think they've been outstanding. I think the Netherlands have been brilliant as well. I still have to stick with France, though. I still think France, they yet to click, and I still think they have a lot more to give. And I just think the power in the side and the technical ability, I don't see them getting beaten. You know, if they come up against it in England or something in the next stage, I think they'll beat them. Like, you know, I think they'll beat most teams they come up against.
What are your Euros watching habits at the moment? Like, a lot of us are kind of have the TVs on in the background and trying to get as much action in as we can. Look, this evening it's going to be quite difficult with 2 matches at 5 o'clock and 2 at 8 o'clock. But are you someone who watches as much as you possibly can? Are you turning up at half time to see Roy Keane on punditry, your old under-19 City manager Patrick Vieira on punditry, or what's your go-to plan each day?
Yeah, to be fair, look, I'm watching them. I have the TV on, and then I have the laptop on as well. I'm just trying to keep up with as much as I can. It's just so much football going on. You like the games last night, especially. You kind of want to watch England. You want to keep an eye on them, but then, you know, played under Steve Clark and, you know, played with some of the lads in the Scotland team. So I was trying to keep an eye on them, but it's difficult. But, you know, you won't complain when there's too much football on. But it's been really good, to be fair. And the coverage has been great. Roy, obviously, he's comedy gold, isn't he?
Never mind him, Shane. He's over in Cyprus. He's had the feet up. He's out in the beach bar, big screen, cocktail in hand.
That's what. Yeah, to be fair. It's, can't say much about that. I probably would. If we weren't on back training now, so if I wasn't back training, I'd probably be sitting on the beach still with a cocktail in the hand, watching one or two of the games, and have the phone on for the other game.
You mentioned Scotland there, Jack. We might talk about some of the midfielders we've seen in the tournament. We only got one glimpse of Billy Gilmour, and just what an outstanding performance it was against England. It's such a shame he wasn't there last night. Maybe it would have made a huge difference to have him up against Modric last night. As a central midfielder who loves to get on the ball, who loves to be the one who's starting the attacks, how do you rate Gilmour, and where do you think this guy's going?
Sky is the limit for this kid. Like, you know, he's so young. He is Scotland's Modric, really. You know, so they missed him unbelievably last night, and it's his ball retention, and not only that, his ability to get the ball back, and you know, I think he starts to play. I think he's a massive part in calming down the madness, really, that Scotland bring to a lot of the games, and he brings that technical ability and, you know, able to start to play, and he's an unbelievable player. He's been really, really hard done by. You know, it's just the world we live in at the moment. It would have been an unbelievable experience for him to be involved in a game like that as well. But look, the sky is the limit for that kid, and they really missed him last night. And, you know, his performance against England was absolutely sensational.
Like you mentioned, I guess how difficult that is, and like you know what it's like to come down with COVID-19, Jack, in an international camp by October of last year, and like you had it quite bad as well. So it's a tough thing when you're in an international camp and you get that news that you have been diagnosed positive with COVID-19. So like you know exactly what Billy Gilmour is feeling like right now, I suppose.
Yeah, look, he must be extremely down, and you know, it's difficult because we're all thinking about he's obviously missed the game, and I'm sure he's gutted about missing the game. But you know, you have to think about his health as well, and you have to think that, you know, hopefully he's okay and he's doing okay, and even if they had got through, would he have been, you know, fit and available for the next couple of games, and would he have been physically ready to play in them games? It's the same situation kind of Mason Mount and Chilwell are in. Even if they're allowed out of isolation, I think next week, I don't see them playing in the game unless they can kind of use St George's Park as somewhere where they can train at the moment. I'm not sure whether they can do that or not, but I can't see them coming out of isolation and playing. So, you know, it's a major blow for these players. But what can you do? It's just the world that we're living in at the moment. It's hard to put a finger on it. I've been through it myself. It's you know, you'd be extremely down when you find out. But, you know, football was at the back of my head then after, because obviously, you know, my health, I didn't feel great for a couple of weeks. So, you know, I was more concentrated in getting that back and then getting back to the football. But at the time when you are ruled out, it's obviously it's heartbreaking.
Is Luka Modric a midfielder you would have watched a lot of and analysed and tried to pick up parts of his game and figure out how he always manages to get himself in the right position at the right time?
I just think he's a one in a generation type of player. You know, I think, you know, I'd love to copy my game on him and be able to rob stuff off him, but, you know, I'm sure everyone is trying to do that with Luka Modric. I remember when I went to Tottenham as a kid on trial, and it was one of his first games he was playing against Charlton, and he absolutely ran the show. And I remember looking at my brother and thinking, who was this? And you know, he's just obviously gone on to have an unbelievable career. You know, probably the one player that if Manchester United probably had a sign, they probably would have been in a much better position to win the Premier League. I think that's the player they've really missed out on to replace Paul Scholes. I think him and Paul Scholes are probably, you know, two most technically gifted players I've seen probably today.
I wondered what you thought made of the English midfield situation at the moment, Jack, because there's a lot of, as myself and Nathan were talking about, a lot of talk around the English starting teams each game, but they've gone with Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice and that kind of defensive movement each game. But like Jadon Sancho's been sitting on the bench, Jude Bellingham got a little bit of time as well last night off the bench, but like who would you have in that team? Mason Mount, of course, is a doubt for next week with being the close contact to Billy Gilmour. But what's your ideal English starting midfield?
I would have Mount, and I would have Phil Foden playing in there, and I'd have Grealish off the left with or Grealish off the right, and Sterling and Harry Kane. That's what I go with. I think that, but obviously, Southgate has he's obviously gone with kind of clean sheets and looking at winning the tournament that way. And Luka has paid off for them so far, but I just don't see the ball retention with Phillips and Royce being good enough if they go and play against a Portugal or a France or, I think they're trying to win the tournament. And to be fair, they looked better last night when they were playing, and they looked like they had more energy last night. Players running past Kane, and I think that's the way that they're trying to win the tournament, really, with pace and power past Kane and running past them. So look, they were better last night, but I just don't see them having enough to ball retention wise, because it's difficult as you get obviously later into the tournament. You're not as fresh, and to not have a lot of the ball is quite difficult. And I think when they play against the better teams, I think that would be their downfall.
That team that you went through there, Jack, that you would play, isn't actually radically different from what Southgate will go with. It's probably just one change, which would be maybe Foden playing in a slightly deeper role instead of Calvin Phillips. If you were to go with that sort of system, is Declan Rice a good enough midfielder to hold it all together? And have they a good enough defence if they were to just have Declan Rice there that they can actually withhold? Do they just have so much more of the ball by having Foden, Rice and Mount close together that actually they don't need to worry as much defensively?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what they have to prove, isn't it? That's kind of what they have to go out and prove, that they are good enough. Declan Rice has to prove that he is good enough to anchor that midfield on his own. And for me, I think that's where they have to try and win the tournament, not just stay in the tournament. I think they have to try and win the tournament. I think they have to try and, I think they will have to eventually play the big boys. And I know people are talking about them in the next round. It might come a bit soon, but they're going to have to play these teams eventually. And I think the best way of beating these teams is by getting Harry Kane in good positions, and Jack Grealish and Sterling and Phil Foden. I think that's the best way they can go about beating the big boys. I think Harry Kane, he's yet to score in this tournament, and for a striker of his ability, to not get a goal now at the moment. You see Lukaku on fire. I just think that they're set up not as free flowing that would allow him to get the opportunities to score, because he hasn't really had the opportunities yet. The best pass he's received all tournament was from Harry Maguire, centre back, last night. So I think if you get the likes of Phil Foden, Jack Grealish in them positions to feed the likes of Harry Kane, if he can get, he's a good enough player to get 2 goals against the likes of a France and propel England to a major tournament, because this is a chance, really.
I noticed a good interest in Stephen O'Donnell, the Scottish international's comments around Jack Grealish, and talking about taking tips from John McGinn in terms of how to stop Grealish when he came on the pitch. And thought it was interesting that he used the positive affirmation and telling him he was really, really good looking and had massive calves and that sort of thing. Like, is that how you stop a player like Jack Grealish? Or I'm sure you're used to some sledging yourself. You're a tricky midfielder yourself. So is a little bit of sledging commonplace like that?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you get a lot of that on a football pitch. I actually played with Sods, Stephen O'Donnell at Kilmarnock, and he's a nice fella, and I'm sure he was, just trying to get any advantage he can over Jack Grealish, because you will need to do that, because he's such a good player. He's such a talented player. He's world class. He really is world class. And I think England now do need to get him in that team and stay in that team, and I think he can be the one really to push them on, like, because he has the confidence, he has the, he wants to be the man, and as I said, if you get the likes of Jack Grealish and Phil Foden in the right positions, any club team would pay 200 million for them players. So if you've got them at your disposal, then you've got to use them. You
can see why Manchester City are thinking about spending that sort of money on Jack Grealish. It's hard to underestimate how impressive he was last night. He's playing his club football at Aston Villa. He's been brilliant, but he's never played in a game of the stature of last night, whereas the likes of Foden, Kane have played in Champions League finals. For him, this is as big as it's ever been. There was a lot of hype, there was a lot of expectation, and to come on and to do his thing and to stay true to the way he plays the game. Geez, it's pretty exciting for England and for whoever signs him this summer.
He always affects the game, and that's the thing with him. Every time I've watched him play, he always has an input on the game, whether he's winning fouls or he's getting assists, or he's added goals to his game this year. He always has an effect on the game. It seems to be every time you watch him play, you come away from the game talking about him. So he's been absolutely superb this season. And as you say there, the likes of Man City showing interest in him. Man City could have a forward line next year of Sterling, Foden, Kane and Grealish. You know what I mean? England have that in this tournament. You're talking about one of the best club teams in the world, can spend numerous amounts of money on any kind of players, and they could have a front four English, born players. So, we think Gareth Southgate has an unbelievable chance this tournament to really, kick England on. And, I think if they don't this time, then, when will they?
Have you allowed yourself, Jack, to think, myself and Declan Rice in the middle of midfield, we could play maybe Howard just in front, we play Grealish off the left, we'll have Callum Robinson and Aaron Connolly. What could have been, eh?
Yeah, well, I think all the players in our squad are Irish and proud, and I think that's the main thing, especially when you go out to represent your country. You want to be fully there. And I think you see with the Scotland squad even and how well they kind of done with the unity, the Wales, the way they're all together. I think it can really help you in that sense. So look, if they want to play for England, let them go and play for England, because we're all Irish and proud, and we give anything for that jersey. So if somebody else doesn't want to do it beside you, then no problem.
Wales are an interesting enough prospect, Jack, and I know you made your first competitive game for Ireland against them in the Nations League, and that was a historic night, no doubt, for the League of Ireland. But how do you weigh up what they can achieve in this tournament? Because of course they went to the semi-finals 5 years ago in Euro 2016, but you've come up against this Welsh team, and they are stacked with talent. And when you see the likes of Ramsey and Bale running the show, it's no wonder that they get deep into major tournaments. But how far can they go this time around?
Yeah, I think they've Denmark in the next round, do they?
Yeah, Denmark.
So it's a coin draw, I think, for them. Any team with Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey in your team. Kiefer Moore is a really good player as well, and you've got the likes of Dan James. Even if Dan James doesn't start, he can come on. You've got David Brooks there as well, so they've got a good bench. They've got a really good bench. So look, I think they have a good chance of getting past Denmark, but it's going to be difficult for them when they come up against the really big teams. But wouldn't write them completely off to maybe get into the semi-final.
We're looking at some of the games as well later on today, Jack, and in Group E, Slovakia, Spain at 5 o'clock. Are you looking at this Slovakian team and looking, they had a great result beating Poland earlier in this group, but kind of bittersweet watching on and seeing Slovakia doing what they're doing. And look, if they get a point against Spain in Seville tonight, they guarantee a place in the last 16. But having come up against them quite recently, do you think they can get a result against Spain based on what you've seen so far? Yeah,
I think watching Spain, anyways, I think if Slovakia set up in a certain way where they pack the defence and they do only need a draw. Spain have been pretty slow, pretty passive in the way they're playing. They haven't moved the ball really at any real tempo. So it's a one-off game, and they need a draw to get through. So if they do that, it'd be an unbelievable achievement, and it'd be a huge disappointment for Spain. But it's a one-off game. Anything can really happen in a one-off game. Spain have been, they've been miles over really, and I don't see them with the firepower up front, Morata up there to really, put a team to the sword, saying that they'll probably go and win 3-0 tonight and he'll get a hat-trick.
Yeah, we were saying at the top of the show, I can only imagine the debates that are going on in Spain at the moment about Morata and his form, and whether it should be Morata or Moreno, or they should change system. It's a difficult position for Luis Enrique to be in, trying to find a striker to find form in the middle of a tournament, particularly when Morata, everything we've ever seen him, this is sort of what he's like.
Yeah, that you've hit the nail on the head. It's it's okay doing it in qualification or anything, but when you're actually in the tournament, it's quite difficult to go and change it then and try and look for something else. It's too late, really, isn't it? So look, I think he's kind of backed him as his man, and if it was me, you kind of have to stick with him now, because I know he's not on form, but a bit like Southgate with Kane, you've kind of have to stick with your man. I know they're in completely different leagues altogether, but if you're going into the tournament now and you're playing him, me personally, I would just stick with him, because it's you've got to back him. It's too late. You hit the nail on the head, really.
I guess Sweden-Poland then is the other game in that group, 5 o'clock in St. Petersburg. Jack, we might move on to Group F a little bit, because I don't know who's kind of stood out for you in this one, because Germany, pre-tournament, we kind of thought this is Jogi Löw's last tournament in charge. Hansi Flick will take over afterwards, and maybe it won't go too well for the Germans, and yet never rule out Germany, because after losing 1-0 to France in the first game, they had that excellent display against Portugal, winning 4-2 at the weekend. Of these 4 teams, that maybe we'll leave Hungary aside a bit unfairly, but of Germany, Portugal, France, who can you see going the furthest in this tournament?
I think France. I think France are unbelievable teams, stacked with talent. But I've been surprised with Germany. I actually didn't fancy Germany at all, especially after watching them in the first game. I didn't think they had enough up top to trouble teams, but then they went and they scored 4 goals against Portugal. So look, you never write the Germans off. They've been there, they've done it. If they get out of the group, they go really, really deep into the tournament, I suppose. Like everyone, I think if they could play possibly England next. So if Germany are playing England at the likes of Wembley, I think they haven't got a great track record there, England against Germany. So I'm sure mentally they'll have the advantage. So look, it's my pick would still be France to get out that group and go on and do the best out of them 3 teams. But I've actually been surprised with Germany. I think they've probably surprised a few people.
Is match fitness and sharpness, like, it's something that I've seen a couple of people bring up in post-match interviews. Like Aaron Ramsey spoke about not remembering the last time he played 3 matches in a week. Gareth Southgate last night was talking about his players maybe lacking a bit of match fitness in some regards. And then I think about Portugal as well, and when you see someone like Bruno Fernandes in that Portuguese midfield, who clearly did a lot of running, a lot of work and a lot of minutes on the pitch for Manchester United during the season, like, is that a surprising thing at this level of international football, that there's still players who are I guess really, really tired heading into a tournament, or is it just to be expected given the amount of games that footballers have to play these days?
Yeah, look, it's difficult, and you also have to take in the weight of expectation on these players as well going to a major tournament. And I'm sure Bruno Fernandes has, I'm sure he is tired. He's played a lot of football. But you're going into a major tournament. I'm sure he would be buzzing, but it's just a mental side of it, and physically, is he as sharp as what he shown earlier on in the season for Manchester United? He probably not, and towards the back end of the season, he did lose a bit of form, So look, it's a bit of a catch-22, because you look at the likes of a Grealish then, who didn't play a lot towards the end of the season, and he's probably, I know he's struggling with a little bit of an injury at the moment, and he's doing his own program, so he's probably, lacking match minutes, and he probably needs more minutes, and I think last night would have done him well. So it's hard. It's, Portugal maybe want to drop players, rest players for the next round, but it's a difficult one, because some players are needing minutes, and then like the likes of Jordan Henderson and these kind of players, and then some players, they do look physically tired.
Jack, can you talk about that weight of expectation of representing your country? Because even when we talk about Ireland at times, if things aren't going well, there'll be a question about, well, why can't they replicate their form at club level, at international level? And you sort of have to remind people that, like, they are living the dream here. You're pulling on a green jersey. It's a very different experience from the run-of-the-mill, week in, week out club game. Would you have found, when you have played for Ireland, a sense of expectation, a sense of the jersey weighing heavily on your shoulders?
Look, you do realise it. You realise you're in a really privileged position, and every kid in the country and probably every grown man would love to be in that position as well. I think it's the build up to it as well. I think it's you're named in an international squad, and then it's the build up to the game. It might be a couple of weeks away, and it might be a big game, it might be a qualifier, it could be a major tournament. So that's playing on your mind, and you're not just bouncing into a league game where you're playing on a Friday, then you're playing on a Tuesday, and then you could be playing a Saturday. It's you're going into an international camp, and it's a couple of weeks away, and it's playing on your mind. You're kind of thinking about that. Then you go in, it's only 1 or 2 games over the space of 10 days, so you've got plenty of time to think about it. You're around the hotel, so these things do play on your mind, but most of the time it is excitement to get out there and just let off all steam really, and just go out and do your best. But I do get that weight of expectation. I do feel I do kind of emphasise really with what some of the players would feel.
Just on that, Jack, like the issue of representing your country, and I guess, like, we spoke to Paddy Agnew, the Italian football journalist, on this show last week, and he was talking about the Italians and this, I guess, idea of Il Gruppo, and how they're all together as one big squad of 26, and the whole country is behind them. And even look at the the negative press that the English team gets quite often. And look, if Harry Kane misses a couple of games without a goal, suddenly the whole country's on his back, the whole press is on his back, and yet the players inside the camp are saying, well, everything's great inside the camp, that's just all outside. It's kind of similar to how I would look into the whole Stephen Kenny Republic of Ireland situation as well, because before the recent games and the wins against Andorra, the win against Andorra and the draw against Hungary, look, there was a lot of negativity around style of play versus results, and how much time do we give this new manager, how much patience should we have? Like, do you find that as well, that sometimes there's a frustration that I guess what's represented within the camp and the mood within the camp is totally different to how it's perceived from outside?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's that's a big thing. If I was in the England camp now and it was Phil Foden, say, a young player, and someone like a Saka is out there coming in, Grealish out there coming in, and it seems to be that Foden's been forgotten about now, and he was to talk about the tournament before he came in. So players are obviously seeing these things, and they're obviously listening to these things. I've seen Werner and Kai Havertz talking about, giving each other a bit of stick about what the English media do be saying about them sometimes. So, you are aware of these things as players, but, I think the best players kind of just have that tunnel vision and just block it out. And, sometimes, I do see with the Italy camp, I see how together they are, and the likes, Mancini, obviously, I think he's used nearly everyone in the squad, bringing on the goalkeeper as well. So it does create that kind of, unity. But it is difficult as a player if you are listening to that outside noise and you can hear people. You can obviously hear people in the media talking about whether you should be in the team or you should be out of the team. That must be difficult for a young player like Phil Foden to deal with.
I guess another thing I wanted to touch on, Jack, with you was the Christian Eriksen incident that we had in the second day of the tournament, I think it was. But scary as it was, luckily he seems to be okay. He's released from hospital and everything seems okay with him, thankfully. But just on that incident, and look, hypothetically speaking, I guess if that's something like that happened to your teammate on the pitch, and that would be a terrible thing to witness and to have to I guess grasp at the time. But what did you make of UEFA and I guess giving Denmark this ultimatum of having to come out and play the game again so soon after that had happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I think there was obviously this big uproar when UEFA came out and against the Super League, basically, all the people coming out about the Super League, and then UEFA are making a team, basically giving a team who a player has just had a cardiac arrest on the pitch and ultimating on whether they can come out and play the game either tonight or tomorrow. And I think people were thinking that UEFA were the saviours of football only a couple of weeks ago, and I think it just suited them. I think it suits them, people in privileged positions to fill their pockets, and it's wrong, and it's it's one of the things that's I think is quite wrong with football at at this moment in time, and I think that was so wrong what they did to Denmark, and basically gave them an ultimatum, to go out and play that game. It's actually crazy to think that the game still went ahead, even when you look back at the events that happened. So look, this is a young player's life. He's 29 years of age. His wife is down on the pitch. His captain is, consoling the whole team. It's actually hard to put into words that they actually went back out and played that game on the same night. I remember watching the game and thinking, my God, like this, they shouldn't play another game really in the tournament. I just think what mentally they must be feeling must be absolutely horrible, especially after such an incident.
It's terrifying, and look, luckily he's okay, and it was all kind of sorted from there. Jack, just I guess we're closing towards the end, but Nathan mentioned life in Cyprus at the beginning, and I couldn't help but laugh at Chris Shields' statement with retiring or leaving Dundalk last night. He was talking about the smell of curry sauce coming from the Roma should be bottled and sold in Dundalk. Like he's obviously loved life in Dundalk. Like how are the culinary delights in Cyprus? Is life, I'd say, is fairly decent over there weather-wise, but how are things at Apoel at the moment?
Yeah, to be fair, everything's okay. We've been off for a couple of weeks, and the whole team's been off. I was away doing a bit of training. I'm back now a week before the rest of the lads, just trying to get fit. Obviously had the injury and was back training towards the back end of the season. So now feeling good, back in a little bit earlier than the rest of the lads, try and build a bit of fitness. Manage the program over pre-season, and everything's good. The life is nice. Football is football at the end of the day. Be in Cyprus one minute, he could be in England the next, he could be in Scotland the next. You just don't know. So I'm just trying to enjoy it out here while it lasts, because you never know. It's I know that in this game it's contract. You never know when it can end, and I don't think I've ever seen a contract that were only last summer over. So it's just one of those things. But I'm really enjoying it. The lifestyle's really nice, and to be fair, the club have been sound, so it's all going well.
Yeah, enjoy the sun. You never know when you're going to find yourself in the northeast of England for a couple of years. So
that's it.
Give us your winner then. It sounds like you're veering towards France.
Sorry?
Your winner of the tournament. It sounds like you're staying with France.
Yeah, gonna stay with France. I think they still yet to peak, and I think that's a good thing. I think they're just motoring along, and didn't have a great result the other night, but I still think they have too much for most of the teams in the tournament.
Jack, great stuff this morning as always. Thanks a million for taking the call. Much appreciated.
Thanks very much, lads. Can I just say about Shieldsy, just wish him the best of luck. He's been an unbelievable servant for the League of Ireland, and had some great battles with him, and he's an absolute gentleman. So I'd like to wish him all the best, and I hope it goes well.
Yeah, well said. Hopefully he gets that statue outside Oriel Park that he so badly wants, according to his statement. Tongue in cheek, of course. But yeah, great stuff, Jack. Thanks a million for that this morning.
Thanks, lads. Jack
Byrne there, the current Republic of Ireland international. Nathan, I'll get your thoughts on today's 4 games in just a moment. It's time to remind you our OTB Sports Euro 2020 show is live with Paddy Power's Save Our Game, donating €10,000 to Irish football for every goal England scored at the Euros. That's up to €20,000 now after Raheem Sterling scored for England last night in their game. I just want to bring you some of the markets now for today's 4 games. So plenty of action at 5 o'clock and 8 o'clock today. So some of the Paddy Power markets, have a look. I don't think we have that video, in fact. But so Nathan, I'll get your thoughts. And I know myself, yourself and Ger have been doing our predictions across the season. I'm glad you're on this morning.
Sorry, my line is about to drop.
Is it about to drop? That's funny, because let's bring up the leaderboard. That's ironic that your line is about to drop just as this comes up. I'm on 13 points, Nathan. Ger is currently in second, so that order is in fact wrong. But Ger is second on 11 points, and yourself on 9. There's still plenty of time. We've opted for 3 of today's games. So Spain, Slovakia, we've all gone for Spain. Hard to see past it. Hard to see past Spain in that game, although Slovakia have been fairly decent in the tournament so far. Sweden, Poland. I've gone for the Swedes. They have a decent record against Poland, it has to be said. And yourself and Ger have gone for the draw in that one. And then the big one later on, Portugal, France. Myself and Ger going for the draw, and you're going for France. I can see why, because France have an incredible record against Portugal. But how are you seeing these games then, Nathan, this evening? We might start with Group E then, and those two games. Maybe Spain against Slovakia first. How do you see this one panning out?
Oh, it's funny, I've gone through this tournament without too much regrets about Ireland not being there and about the way the world is right now. But if the world was in a different way, Shane, we would be in Bilbao right now, in the sunshine. Ireland would have qualified. The games wouldn't have been moved. It'd be 30 degrees. We'd have a nice glass of rosé. We'd be sitting down at lunch thinking about heading to the match. Maybe I haven't had a late night, and instead I'm sitting here in Dublin looking out at the pissing rain and thinking, where did it all go wrong? Spain have got to get it done, haven't they? They've enough quality. We saw what Slovakia were about. Obviously, there was nothing between the Republic of Ireland and Slovakia at all, and they got their win. They've done very, very well so far. They're probably going to have enough to maybe just about scrape through, depending on how things go. I still think Spain will get the job done. I think they're just too good. I think Morata against Slovakia will get there. If they don't, it's going to be the story of the group stage, that if Spain don't manage to qualify. And it's a very tight group. Sweden could find themselves again on the right side of things with a nice draw. They're already through. The Poles haven't exactly lit up the tournament so far. There's nothing particularly exciting about them from what we've seen, but again, I don't think that Sweden have a huge amount more quality than Poland, so I wouldn't be at all surprised with Sweden already through that one would end up as a draw, and Sweden will take their chances then at what happens in the match between Slovakia and Spain. And
it is an interesting one, because Poland might sit bottom of the group at the moment, but they know a win in that game in St. Petersburg takes them through, and anything else and they're out, of course. And Sweden will top Group E if they win. That would mean a last 16 tie in Glasgow for them, and I know their Celtic defender Mikael Lustig would probably look forward to a last 16 game in Glasgow. So that's a decent game at 5 o'clock in St. Petersburg, but really 8 o'clock is where it's at this evening, Nathan. I guess we'll start with the Germany-Hungary game. That's it in Munich, that one, and hopefully they'll light up the lights in the pride colours of the Allianz Arena. I know that's been kind of discussed in advance, and UEFA trying to stay apolitical, but maybe they'll come to their senses in advance of that game tonight. But Germany have Mats Hummels, Ilkay Gundogan returning to training as well. They picked up knocks in that game against Portugal. You'd imagine, albeit Hungary picked up a very famous draw against France, the world champions, in the last game, but surely Germany will get the better of them tonight.
You'd have to expect that Germany will now kick up a gear. The confidence they must have taken, it felt as though the shackles were released against Portugal. We saw Kai Havertz continue the form that he showed for Chelsea at the end of the season. He could go on now and be one of the real stars of this tournament. I think Gnabry, who didn't get the goals as of yet, I tipped him as top scorer. He's had the influence, he just hasn't had the goals to justify that, and the runs that he makes, the space that he seems to provide for everybody else, and the amount of options they have as well off the bench, attacking wise. I know Timo Werner gets a lot of stick, but again, he fits into that system of movement, of space. Leroy Sané is there. Goretzka is coming back to full fitness as well. Yeah, I think Germany will win this game, and it'll be fascinating to see where they end up. Is it against England in a week's time at Wembley? It's such a different proposition right now, Germany, to where we thought they were at the start of this tournament. And France, Portugal, the French haven't kicked into gear yet. We're all assuming they will. But again, this tournament is thrown completely if Portugal can somehow go and win this game. And next thing, we may well find France are third in the table or second in the table and go to play England, or go on a completely different route. Portugal were such a mess down the right-hand side. Surely they can't stick with Semedo again. Bruno Fernandes, as you say, I think since football returned pretty much a year ago, he's played almost 80 games. While he had some important moments for United in the last few months, the dynamism was most certainly gone, and we haven't seen it at all. Jota, maybe one of those benefiting from not having played a huge amount of league games for Liverpool last season because of the injuries. He's looked very fresh, but they need something at right back, because Semedo, I thought Wolves had a very average season and was ripped to pieces by Goossens again and again and again. And it was almost overlooked, I think, because it may have happened the day the tournament started, but João Cancelo being ruled out for Portugal at the very last minute after testing positive for COVID was just a seismic blow for them with what he could have done at right back. And they haven't recovered from that. And listen, they're going to go through. We know from Portugal last time around that they can squeeze and do the right thing and get a result when it's needed. This could be the most important game. Probably is the most important game of the group stage for what it will mean for both teams, for their confidence and where they end up in terms of the draw. I just think Mbappe has, of all the French players, has looked the liveliest and will have enough.
Yeah, Mbappe could give Semedo a bit of a nightmare game tonight, you'd imagine. Like in Portugal's win over France, you have to remember at Euro 2016 is fresh in the memory, but that's their only win in 13 games against France, so they don't have the best of records. And should be remembered as well, similarly to Phil Foden, and Southgate had the luxury of being able to rest Phil Foden, but if Ruben Dias picks up a booking tonight, he'll miss the last 16 game for Portugal, which will be a disaster for them. And look, maybe this game finishes in a draw, Germany win and they top the group, and England play, France in the next round, but it remains to be seen. Will you do us a favour and on Twitter at Nathan Murph, keep us up to date with the permutations, because we'll be scratching our heads later on, I think, for some of these games. But listen, Nathan, great stuff this morning. Thanks a million for all of that.
Thanks, Shane.
And Nathan Murphy there, our own Nathan Murphy, Premier League commentator, of course, as well. So if you missed any of the show this morning, the Euro 2020 show, as always, and great stuff with Jack Byrne, the Irish international midfielder, as well today. Loads of interesting talking points, analysing some of the different midfielders in the tournament as well. Luka Modric, Jack Grealish, plenty of others. Just really great insight from Jack and life in Cyprus as well. If you missed any of that show, the full podcast is up very shortly in the OTB Sports app and on otbsports.com as well. You'll be able to watch the full episode back on youtube.com/off the ball. You will also have plenty of clips as well up on our social media channels on Instagram and on Twitter at Off the Ball. Myself on Twitter as well at ShaneHannon01. I'll be back tomorrow Thursday morning from 11 AM to reflect on all of today's games in the company of Pat Nevin and indeed Joe Malloy as well. So same time, same place tomorrow morning. Enjoy all of the football today. We'll speak to you tomorrow. Have a good one.
Football on Off the Ball
with Paddy Power's Save Our Game. England's goals total 20k so far for Irish football. Gamble responsibly. Gamblingcare.ie.